Are you sitting on your daily commute thinking longingly about your next holiday? Are you filled with so much wanderlust that you've got no idea where to go next? Or have you got your next trip booked and in the bag and you're looking for tips and tricks to make it all go smoothly? Then, welcome to the TRAVELUST Podcast. Join me, Sam Sparrow, every fortnight as I chat to the people who've built their life around a desire to experience the world. As a travel blogger and wannabe professional city breaker, I'm nosy, and we get deep into travel memories, favourite destinations, and tips to make your next trip go with a bang. This week, I'm in conversation with Emma-Louise Trotter from the incredible lifestyle blog, The Life Edit. Based in Harrogate, Emma runs her own freelance business, and we talk about how travels fit around her work. We talk about early road trips to France and Italy and life-changing travels in Dubai and the USA. Emma is completely open about how she uses travel as therapy, and we have such a wonderfully deep chat about how travel has been a huge part of her life through the good times and the more challenging. This was one of the most heartwarming and moving interviews I've recorded so far, and I know you'll all really love it. Remember to tweet me at Sam R. Sparrow with the hashtag TheTravelUst with your favourite travel tips and memories and your perspective on what we discuss. You can find even more travel content on my website asthesparrowflies.com along with all of the podcast episodes. Are you packed? Then let's go. So I'm very excited, finally, because we've had a lot of technical difficulties and we've been trying to plan this call for ages. But I'm super excited to have Emma, who is a lovely friend of mine and also an amazing blogger and online source. She has her own blog called The Life Edit. Emma, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Absolute pleasure.
This is a proper treat. I feel like we've had our whole friendship basically via the internet in some form or another. So I'm quite excited we get to do it in another medium now.
I know. We've done it in every kind of medium possible, and including face to face. You have sat on my cold hard floor playing Cards Against Humanity, so that's all good.
I was so drunk that night.
I don't remember any of it.
No, how we got the train home the next day, I have no idea.
Oh my God,
I've never. Yeah, we left early.
You had to go really early, didn't you?
Yeah, but thank God I've never been so grateful for first class travel for free. I think they just took pity on us because we just looked so dishevelled that they were like, just sit in first class and be quiet.
I don't even want to think how many years ago that was, Emma. It's really scary.
No, I think it must be 6 years.
Oh, stop.
Is that right?
Yeah, something like that. 5 or 6 years, I reckon.
Yeah.
Anyway,
for sure.
Emma and I go way back on the internet. And I'm really excited to have you coming on and talking about travel. But for for the people that are listening that don't go way back and don't have drunken stories in common, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, so I'm Emma, obviously. I am a freelance social media manager come creative consultant who also has a lifestyle blog and a bit of a Twitter addiction. So that's basically me. I help businesses and brands sort of find their voice online. And that's what I do for the pennies. And then for the funsies, I write about travel and life stuff and a bit of fashion, quite a lot of opinion pieces. I think probably if people were to describe me, they'd probably say, "Oh, you'll know Emma. She's a really opinionated one." That's usually how I'm described. And I'm okay with that because I am very opinionated. I'm either described as opinionated or the one who swears a lot, both of which very true.
This is why we get on, Emma, because I have also been described as Captain Sweary before, which I took as that's a badge of honour as far as I'm concerned. So
Captain
we have a lot in
Sweary,
common.
I love it.
And we'll
Lieutenant Sweary.
Oh yes, I love it. Let's get a whole sweary kind of army together. It's going to be amazing.
Yeah, I love it.
We'll talk about kind of where people can find you online at the end. I'll put all the links in the show notes. But just as a heads up, Emma's opinion pieces on her website are absolutely phenomenal. Emma's doing herself a little bit of a disservice in terms of her writing and her writing style. So I would implore you to go, after you've listened, to go and click on her blog link and get lost in there. Grab a cuppa or maybe a gin and just get lost in her writing.
Oh, thank you. I think I've really found my stride with talking about my opinion again. I kind of hid away from it for a while, but I think I did one of those daft Instagram story polls about what did people want to actually hear from me, and near enough unanimously it was share your opinions, be a bit ranty and be quite honest. And actually that's a place I am quite comfortable in now. So, and actually the feedback from those posts has been really, really quite moving. So yeah, there will be more of that for sure.
Yes. So moving on from kind of opinionated, and actually I'm sure your opinions are going to come full scale into this when we start talking about your likes and dislikes when it comes to travel. But let's take it all the way back pre-internet days, which is terrifying to think that, you know, when we were young, there was no internet. No. But talk me through kind of your earliest travel memory. Where did it all start for you?
Well, I think with like most people, you can probably class parents as being my main kind of contributors in terms of my travel interests. So my whole travel as a childhood was basically driving to France, kind of semi off season, a little bit cold, not when all my other friends were going on holiday, and going to static caravans in various parts of France. And I think at the time, if I'm honest, I probably used to roll my eyes quite a lot and want to go on like an all-inclusive or a beach holiday. But actually looking back at it now, they are the happiest memories from me as a child. They are, you know, as an only child, I was really close to my parents. And so actually, I think that really was solidified on holidays when, you know, it was literally torrential rain for the whole week we were in France. So we had to stay in the caravan the whole time. And you get really used to spending time with people. So I think that for me, that's where my love of like not minding the actual travel element of getting on holiday. Because if you can be in a car for 3 days driving through Europe to wherever you're going on holiday, you can put up with, you know, a 2-hour delay for a plane and things like that. And I think really that's where my love of new places comes from. I was always really pushed as a kid, not aggressively or anything, but always really, my parents, especially my dad, was really keen that I saw as much of the world as I could, even if that just meant lots of different places in Europe. I definitely my definitive memories of childhood travel are getting sausages and chips from the sort of cafe at the what's called like campsite, and sitting eating them in the caravan watching the rain. I think that's peak Emma childhood travel.
Oh, do you know what? I love that though, because that's peak my travel. I mean, not in France. I did exactly the same, but staying in the UK. And actually a few of the people I've spoken to, I think Beverly's quite similar, and a few of the others. I think it might be a British generational thing about that obsession with caravans and stuff. And I agree that there's something about, and particularly I think as an only child, like you, going on caravan holidays, putting up with awful weather, I think you really start to learn how to make your own fun and your own adventure.
Absolutely.
And I think it leads to, and I kind of think you're a bit like me, wild imagination. And I think that stems from those kind of childhood holidays.
It also does, and totally the fact that, you know, I'm the first person to make a new friend somewhere. I'm, you know, the first person to go and chat to somebody. But I think that came from, if I wanted to have, you know, spend time with kids when I was on a holiday, I had to go and make friends. There was no sibling, there was no, you know, and nobody that I could just automatically have time to spend with. So I would always go. My mum regales stories, much to my horror, of how I used to go up, and my trick is, and I do it today still, which is I go up and compliment somebody. I do. I go and compliment somebody, and I'm like, you know, and that's it. We're friends after that. And I think I used to do it. I always remember going over to, I must have been about 8 because we were in Italy. And I remember going up to this gorgeous little girl who didn't speak any English. She was Italian, and telling her that I loved her hair bobble. She had like one of those, first time I'd ever seen them. And those, you know, the ones that are made of fake hair and look like they're like a really shaggy bun. And I just thought, and that was it. We never spoke the same language. The whole week we were on holiday together, and we played every single day. And actually, our parents helped us write letters to each other by translating, using a book rather than Google Translate. And we wrote to each other probably until we were about 11.
Oh my goodness.
And I don't think I would ever have done that if I had siblings, because I would have had them to play with. And I think that has trickled down. And that's probably one of the reasons I like solo travel now, is actually I'm not afraid of, one, spending time on my own, but two, I've got no worries about going and, deciding to go make a new mate or to go and talk to somebody in a new place.
My God, that story has absolutely warmed my heart. That is so adorable. You know what?
I have my moments.
Yeah, I know. So in the last, so in the episode before this one goes out is actually Beverly from Pack Your Passport. And we talk a little bit about the lost art of pen friends as well. And I don't know if I was saying on that podcast that I don't know whether that even kind of happens anymore, because you just add each other on, I don't know, Facebook or Instagram or whatever when you're younger. It's horrifying to me. And there is something beautiful about that simplistic. I'm so glad that I didn't really travel kind of exotically when I was really young, because there's something really beautiful about that very simplistic kind of making your own adventure, the pouring rain, fish and chips, like making friends on the beach. Like there's something really wonderful about that.
My first boyfriend I met him on the ferry coming from France, from Calais to Dover. And by the time we'd got to Dover, I don't even know how long that journey is anymore these days, but by the time we got there, that was it. We were a couple. I mean, I was 14 and he was 15. And
Fast
we were
work, Emma. I love it.
I mean, both of us were crying as our parents made us leave each other, and we stayed together for just shy of a year.
Wow,
complete long
incredible.
Distance. Yeah, and we're friends on Facebook now. But actually, interestingly, he's one of the few people who sends me a birthday card, even after all these years.
Oh my God, you have the best stories. I love this. They're just it's wonderful. The lost art. Do you know what? I'm starting to get into writing more postcards and letters and stuff.
Yeah.
I think there's something, don't get me wrong. I love the online world. I blog. I've got this podcast. It's amazing. But I don't know. There's just something. I'm really terrified that my own children might not have those experiences that I really treasure.
I think we're coming back around to it as well, because certainly when I travel, obviously I write about travel. I love taking photos. People can see everything online that I talk about, but I'm not really talking, I suppose when I write online, I'm not really doing it to people who are in my life. It's kind of the external audience. And so I now make a concerted effort everywhere I go, every trip I go on, even in the UK, I always send my mum and my grandma a postcard.
Oh, I love that.
And my gran, it's really nice. My gran has them. So bless her, she's 90 this year. She has them stuck on her kitchen cupboards.
Oh,
so she can see all the places I've been. And actually, whenever I go around to her house, it's a nice reminder that actually, although travel is really important to me, actually, as somebody who didn't get to travel in the same way with the same ease that I do, it's kind of nice that she gets to live a little bit vicariously through that.
Oh, that's so lovely. That's amazing. Right. We're recording this and I'm off to Munich next week. I'm just going to send everyone a postcard from Munich.
Do it.
It's going to be amazing.
Do it.
I used to do it all the time and I don't do it as much now and it's ridiculous. So it's going to happen. I'm going to Lincolnshire for bank holiday weekend in May. I'm going to send everyone a postcard from Brampton.
Do it.
I'm going to do it. I'm going to find a really outrageous UK British postcard.
The other thing as well is most of the places that sell postcards are little indie news agents and stuff. So it's really nice. You're doing a bit to support them. You're doing a bit to support the local, community and stuff. And I also think as well is postcards, you don't have to write, I think you feel more pressure to write a whole letter to update people on your life. Whereas actually 3 or 4 lines on the back of a postcard, it's nice to think that actually whilst you are somewhere having a really great time, you're thinking about that person. I think that's a really treasured little moment that's really important. And I think actually if we can hold on to those kinds of moments in the next generation, it'll keep that kind of contact that's not just online alive, which I think is really important.
I really agree. Oh, You've
Sorry,
made
that's a bit
right.
deep.
That's it. No, we're not even 15 minutes in yet, and we've gone super deep. I love it. It's amazing. I would expect nothing less from you. So let's talk about then how you like to travel. So you've talked a little bit about solo travel, and we can talk more about that. But kind of what's your travel style? City break, beach break, budget, luxury, long term, short term. How does it break down for you?
All of the above, basically.
Great.
I will literally take travel in any way it comes. I see any opportunity to be not at home as an opportunity to have a bit of an adventure. I think most of all, for me, are kind of at the heart of why I travel so much and why I enjoy it, whether it's with people or without or solo, is it's a real therapy for me, travel. It makes my heart really happy. So actually, I was working at Crufts. Other dog shows are available.
Oh my God, I can't believe that. I saw that you were posting from that. And then I saw Beverly saying it's really awesome when your friend's working at Crufts and send you dog pictures. And then I was like, oh my God, Emma's at Crufts. Couldn't believe it.
Being paid to basically squish dogs' faces. Hi, perfect life. But it was really interesting because for a lot of my working employed life, I hated going away with work because you were kind of expected to have dinner with certain people and do this and that and have an itinerary. But actually, I just stayed at a hotel at the NEC. It was nothing special, but I make a little ritual of being away and being in a hotel, and I love staying in hotels, even if they're not swanky. So I think that's my travel style, is making the most of any opportunity to be somewhere new, even if that only means being in the hotel. But actually, I used that time in Birmingham, for example, which wasn't a holiday, but I read books, I watched crap on TV, I had room service, I did things that I wouldn't do at home. And I think that is, whether it's, my mum and I, after my dad passed away, my mum and I decided after the funeral and everything that we wanted to go away from reality and go somewhere my dad would never have wanted to go. So we went to Dubai and spent an absolute bucket. I mean, it was obscene how much money we spent, but it was exactly the right thing to do because dad would never have wanted to go there. Nobody knew who we were. Nobody wanted to talk to us about anything. There wasn't that. If we'd gone somewhere like America where people are very, they like to get involved in chit chat about life. In Dubai, they don't. Well, certainly where we stayed, it was, yes, ma'am, not really talking to us in any other way than that, which has a lot of issues. But for us at the time, it was perfect. And it was just outright luxury. I make a joke, and I've talked about it on the blog before, that one of the days I got out of the pool and I sneezed, and it wasn't because I was cold or ill. And within less than 15 seconds, there was a pool attendant putting a towel around my shoulder, checking I was okay and getting me a cup of tea.
Wow.
Now that's luxury. Now I couldn't do that all the time. I'd lose my mind. I couldn't live in that kind of bubble of luxury. But at the same time, I get just as much joy from staying at hostels when I'm away on city breaks, because all I'm doing is sleeping there. I don't want to be in a hotel where I feel obliged to spend time there. I don't want to be spending £150 a night when I could spend £14 a night and spend the rest of the 150 quid a day on doing stuff. So I think for me, the kind of the purpose of travel is always the same no matter where I go. However, that being said, I do have a bit of a hankering for a beach holiday at the moment, because I've crammed a lot of culture into the last 2 or 3 years. And I think actually probably the next big holiday I do will be a Mexico, Cuba, Seychelles-y type.
Go to Cuba. Or Mexico. Mexico's amazing too, but I love Cuba.
Well, I think Cuba more because, one, I think Mexico, I don't know if I just think I'd like the culture more in Cuba. And that's the thing, I want to find that balance. So although I'll go and lay by the pool and stuff, I would like to go somewhere where I can go and do some exploring as well. So yeah, I think it's, for me, it's
do both of them there. Yeah.
Yeah. So yes, I think Cuba's probably next year's holiday, because this year I've got Toronto and New York coming up, which is for my mum's 60th, which will be amazing, but it'll be full on. It'll be like 10 days of doing and achieving and making memories, which will be great. But there is something about just the thought of a holiday where I don't have to do anything would be really nice.
Yeah, so I'm going to Turkey in September on a family holiday.
Amazing.
just for a week in a tiny little fishing village called Kalkan on the kind of
amazing
Turkish Riviera area. And we're in a villa, and there's 6 of us, and we'll be doing nothing.
Amazing. And there's so much to be said for that.
Yeah, a year ago I would not have been interested, but we came back from Marrakesh in February, and I was there with my parents. And we had such a blast together. And I was like, I really enjoyed that. And you know what? I'm hankering for something like slowing it down, just something really chillaxed. And so we just decided to book Turkey.
It's funny though, isn't it? It's funny because you think as teenagers, I was like, oh, holidays with my parents, boring. And now I'm like, yay! Let's go away together.
I love going away with my mum. When my mum and I go away, or whenever we do anything, like, we have the best time. And I don't know if that's just a thing that comes with age. You've got to kind of let the teenage angst kind of dissipate. But now I'm in my 30s, spending time with my mum is like the best fun ever. There is no one that I would want to go out with or go away with more than my mum. She's awesome.
I'm exactly the same. And I get a lot of really cool, fun, travel-y bits just in the UK with the blog. And mum's always the first person that I want to go with because, one, she's brilliant because she's my mum, so obviously I'm a bit biased. But also, I really like seeing her. Like, it's funny, the more time I spend with her on holiday, the more I realise how much of a travel bug she probably had and never really got chance. Because she did the thing that you did in the 80s, which was you get married, you have babies, you have a career, and that's what you do. And I think, actually, I thank my lucky stars on a regular occasion where I realise I'm very lucky to get to travel the way I do, you know, to up sticks and bugger off for a weekend and not really think about it because I don't have anyone other than the furry friend to think about. And she's happy at my mum's. And I think if I can share a little bit of that with mum, that's really nice. And she's brilliant. She's such a great travel companion because we got on so well, but we also know each other's boundaries really well. We know how much time we can kind of spend together before we need to both go our separate ways for coffee and stuff. And I suppose it's like that with anybody that you travel with regularly, but it is lovely. I do think it's done mum and I the world of good in our relationship that we get to do a lot of travelling together.
I think that's lovely. I think, and I think the more my mum and I, some of my favourite trips or just things to do. So like, I often want to do mad things in London and Andrew, Mr. Sparrow, he's a bit like, really? And so I'll just phone my mum up and my mum's like, I'll come and visit that cemetery with you. Why not? Let's bloody go and do
it.
And so you kind of, you know, she can be constantly relied upon to come and follow me around doing batshit crazy stuff. So, you know, it's always good fun there.
Definitely here for the mums.
Yes. So, talked about your earliest travel memory and kind of how you like to travel, which is any way possible. But where did it really all start? So you obviously had these amazing kind of opportunities to travel when you were younger and doing the caravan thing, but around Europe. Like, and as you got older and as you moved into adulthood, where was it? What happened that really made you go, yep, travel is super important to me?
I think it's a kind of a blend, I suppose, of the stuff from childhood, but also losing my dad. I said this the other day to someone and then made a joke about the fact I didn't mean I'd lost him in like a supermarket. I meant he died. And she didn't laugh and I did, and it was so awkward. But it was funny, but awkward. I do love making people feel uncomfortable. I was like, he's not...
We did warn everyone at the beginning.
Yeah, it's a bit dark, sorry. But so basically he was ill for sort of 3 years and before he passed away. And my dad was a real, we'll do it at some point, we'll do it at some point, we'll do it at some point. And it was obviously a bit of a shock. He was only 52 when he passed away. So he never got to do a lot of the someday stuff. And so I think that definitely did it for me. And I was working for myself, not doing what I'm doing now, but I had a cake shop, different life ago. And
oh my God, I forgot that you had the cake shop. Sorry, just as an aside. I always forget that. We need to talk about that in more detail one day.
Yeah, I do. I sort of feel like I need to find a podcast of someone who'll let me talk about the 750,000 jobs I've done over the years. But I yeah, so basically, so I was working for myself, and he passed away on the Monday, and on the Tuesday I carried on with work because I didn't really know what else to do. And I basically did that for 18 months. I didn't have a day off. I didn't really do anything other than work. And it was great. And in a lot of ways, it saved my sanity. But when I got to a point, I kind of hit a bit of a wall, and I thought, I can't do this anymore. And I can't keep going. And a friend of mine said, just book a ticket somewhere and go somewhere. I was like, what do you mean? And she was like, just go anywhere. Just go anywhere that isn't here. Just pick a place, pick a spot on a map somewhere and go there. And the more I thought about it, the more I thought, actually, that is what I want. I want some escapism and some distance from the world. And so I'm very lucky. I have family scattered all over the world. But a large percentage of them are in America and Canada. And so I did that. I just thought, right. So I sold up the business and I decided that that's what I would do. So I buggered off for 3 months, I think it was in the end, around America and Canada. And it was, it was terrifying. I'd traveled alone before, but I'd never done a long haul flight, across the world. I'd never, arrived in an airport where my phone didn't work and I had to organize travel. And I remember really vividly getting off the plane in Miami, at Miami airport, and crossing over. I was going to Gainesville, where my cousin lived in Florida, which is where Florida State University is. And fun fact, where Gatorade was invented.
Really?
Yeah, so the Florida State football team are called the Gators, and it was a total side note, and it was one of the coaches or somebody, and like one of the departments at the university, who developed Gatorade for the athletes, and then ended up selling it, and that's how the university is so rich. Anyway, so
that's amazing.
So the cheapest way to get there was to go on the Greyhound buses, which I'd done loads of research on, and they'd all said, yeah, they're fine, they're safe. What they don't tell you about is the basic smack den, which is the bus terminal at Miami Airport. And I think I'd been on the flights for 10.5 hours-ish, including like transfer times. And I remember walking into the bus terminal thinking, this is where I'm going to die. Like, this is awful. I've made such a massive mistake. And I turned around and I walked back into the airport and I went to find a flight home. And whilst I was and that was it, I was like, forget it. I've made a massive mistake. I'll just go home. And I was wrong. And when I looked up at the departures board, there was a flight to Gainesville leaving in 40 minutes. And I thought, right, I'm just going to suck it up. I had a credit card at the time. It wasn't hugely expensive. I begged, and I got on a standby seat. Someone didn't turn up and I got to go on the flight. And the rest of the trip was life-changing. It helped me grieve. It helped me with so much stuff in my life. And to think that a split-second decision, had that Gainesville flight not been on that board, I'd have literally got on the next flight back to London, and that would have been the end of it. And I think
it's like that sliding doors, isn't it?
Yeah. Honestly, I think, and I'm not really one for like kind of airy-fairy sort of fate things, but I honestly think that there was some divine intervention at that point that put that flight on the board and said, don't give up on this. And I think even now, even loving travel like I do and loving traveling alone, there is always that moment when I land somewhere new and I'm like, oh, this is awful. But practice and experience tells me actually it's only awful for the first couple of minutes and then it's great. And I think that really, I travelled all through Florida. I went to Washington, which was incredible. I went to Buffalo and then Toronto. Then I stayed with some family in Hamilton and then came back home. And really that was it. That was my heart was left, not even in those places, but kind of up in the air at 30,000 feet, realising that actually it was my happy place. And it's been a kind of a way of escapism for me ever since.
Yeah, I completely agree. And you know what, no matter how you come to it and at what stage of life you come to it, I think that people listening to the podcast that kind of love travel as much as we do will understand that feeling, that it's not even about leaving your heart in a place. It's about leaving your heart in that opportunity.
Yeah,
about,
absolutely.
I've left my heart in many places, in every place, even Paris that I don't really love.
Yeah.
Because it is about that it's about the opportunity. It's as much about the process as it is about the destination, actually. Gosh, that sounds we've gone really deep now. I'm going to make a t-shirt that says
exactly it. Yeah. No, but that's so it. There's that saying, isn't it? It's not about the destination, it's about the journey. And actually, if you take that to its core, if you use it in travel terms rather than life terms, that's exactly what it is. Because actually one of my favourite bits of travel, which is a bit nerdy, is the minute you step from the gangway onto the plane. Because for me, and I know for a lot of people, holiday starts at the airport, having a glass of champagne or whatever. But for me, it's that first interaction with the sort of onboard staff and that lovely greeting that you get that's like a hi, welcome on board. And you're like, yes, this is it now. Like, that's it. I'm not at home. I'm also not anywhere specific. I'm in this lovely kind of limbo that in any other aspect of my life, I'd feel really disconnected. But actually, I love that feeling of being nowhere and somewhere at the same time.
Oh, I so agree. Actually, Ellie from The Wandering Quinn, who was on episode 3 of the podcast, she talks quite a lot. Whenever she goes away, she always takes the really awesome pictures out the plane window and she talks about it being her happy place. And I can really connect with that because as someone that until I would say relatively recently had a massive issue with flying, I never let it stop me going anywhere, but flying was a little bit of an issue for me for a while. I really, really get that now because it's about, you've got the whole possibility. The trip hasn't happened yet. You've got endless possibility in front of you. And that's really exciting.
It is. And I think we have that in such small doses in life, in day-to-day life.
Yeah.
We don't have those, most people don't have that feeling of, just that feeling that is indescribable in any other way than you get from travel. And actually, interestingly, I was chatting to a friend who is pregnant and she kind of said that's how she feels at the moment. She's neither not pregnant nor with a child yet. And she's in that lovely little bubble of expectation of what is about to happen. And actually, where a lot of people, and I totally get it, a lot of people feel a lot of anxiety around that. I've kind of learned to lean into that feeling. And I have so much of my life organised and planned and, kind of the hustle of everything, that actually being in the air completely out of control with zero hustle is actually really nice.
You know what? It's so funny you should say that. So, what's his name? Oh, I was going to call him David Brent. Ricky Gervais has got a much maligned Netflix comedy special on Netflix at the moment.
Humanism or something.
Yeah, it's called Humanism. And a lot of people are very unhappy about it. And I watched it today, and I can kind of see why there are a lot of people that are quite offended by it. There is quite a lot of it that I thought was quite funny. But he talks a lot about when he goes to the States, and if he's being paid to sit in first class, that is like a holiday for him because he has got no control. He can't access the internet or his phone or anything like that. He then obviously turned it into a massively obscene joke. But the first bit,
obviously,
I really get because you're not in control and you can't access anything and you kind of have to just go with it. I'd say it's less of a holiday when I fly with Ryanair than perhaps when I fly with.
I think the first class. I flew business class. I've flown business class once, not paid for by me. It was on my way back from my travels, my 3-month travels, and they'd just made mistake after mistake and cancelled my flights. And it's the only time I've ever completely lost my shit in public. I mean, when you see on those awful American sites like TMZ, when you see celebrities having breakdowns, wearing sunglasses, that I was basically Britney 2007. Was it 2007 or 2010? Whatever year she hit the car with the umbrella, that was me in the airport. I went absolutely nuts. And to pacify me, which was lovely of them, they put me in business class. Flying back, it was British Airways business class. Holy shit!
My God.
I mean, holy shit! My defining memory. I think if anyone ever asked me for peak like out of world, out of body travel experience, it would be very gently being like nudged awake by an air hostess, air hostess. That's not what they're called, are they? Flight attendant, whatever the PC word is to call them. Saying, Miss Trotter, really gently waking me up, and I came to in a reclining seat, not a full bed, but fully reclined back, and her asking what I'd like for breakfast. And when I asked what the menu was, she said, no, you tell us what you'd like.
Whoa.
Oh, I was like, okay. So I had cheese on toast.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
Yeah. And I just think, actually, if there's ever like a peak moment of like, so not real life, it's having cheese on toast made for you, at however many 1,000 feet we were. But I can never justify paying that money to travel business class, because it's obscene. Yeah. But if you ever get the chance, if anyone ever gets the chance to upgrade, just take it. Absolutely take it and milk it for all it's worth.
We were joking. We came back from Marrakesh on a British Airways flight, and the British Airways short haul flights are not amazing anymore. In actual fact, my honest advice is, for the difference in what you'd spend, you might as well fly with Ryanair for short haul.
Yeah, I've heard that
Airways.
before.
But they've got like you have like the normal like Euro Traveller, and then they've got like premium Euro Traveller, which is basically the same, except it's split by a curtain and the seats are a bit bigger. And on the way home from Marrakesh, we were sat in the front row of like economy, and because it's only a curtain, basically our feet were in premium. And Andrew turned to me and to my mum and was like, well, that's the closest we're ever going to get to British Airways first class, and just put his feet like in. Yeah. So anyway. Excellent. Yeah, we're not going first class anytime soon, but if anyone wants to send me on a first class flight, I am fully open to that experience.
Did you know there's a guy
upgrade?
No, I don't. And actually, I once upgraded with Virgin when we went. I think it was actually going to New York. What a waste of money! Like we flew back economy, and it was a better experience. In fact, I don't think I could work out what the difference was. And I think it's interesting what you expect. I think from the one, because there isn't just not economy, business class, and first class anymore. There's so many like little interim classes of like premium economy, premium business class, lower upper first class, whatever that is. And I just think it's just a way for you to make more money. And actually, most of them, unless you're laying down, unless you're flying to Australia or somewhere insanely far away, chances are you just get used to it. And especially if you travel a lot, you just get used to getting comfortable on cheap airlines. For sure.
I agree. And also, like, my husband and I mean, we're not hobbits, but we're not exactly tall either. So extra legroom is just not something that really appeals to us. I mean, the thing is, I'm like, for me, where I'm at is that if it's first class, I need to be lying down. I need premium luxury toiletries and champagne on tap. That's it.
Hell,
if that's not it, then
I want a butler. I want a butler. I want a private shower. And I tell you what, so that's what I was going to say, this guy, there's a guy I think he's only 19. I watched the programme about the Etihad Airlines. No, Singapore Airlines.
Okay. Yeah.
And it was on recently, and it's worth a watch if you can find it. But this guy, he has flown all over the world by airlines to do like behind the scenes videos of their airlines. And he's a massive airplane nerd, which is awesome. But I was thinking, what a niche. Can you imagine if like 30 years ago, people knew that at some point there'd be a 19-year-old lad from Kent who was being flown to Singapore to sit on a plane before even, celebrities and multi-gazillionaires had chance to sit on it. Just amazing. It just fascinates me, that world. Yeah.
Oh, dreamy. I would love that.
Absolutely amazing.
I am a little bit obsessed with that high flying, like business class life. I'll be honest with you. Like I've watched a few YouTube videos of people getting upgraded, and I'm just like imagining that I'm there. It literally never going to happen because I haven't got a spare 10 grand sitting behind the sofa.
No. And if you did, you would want to spend it on that. No, you'd spend it at the destination, not all on another 4 trips.
Yeah, exactly. I'm just
or
not
10
that
trips.
kind of. Yeah, I'm just not that wired that way, to be honest. But I would love to experience it just once, I think. As you say, it is fun to do just once.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's talk about your favourite destination.
Well, I've got two. Am I allowed two?
You're allowed to. Go on. I'll allow it.
They're very different, if that helps. Okay, so
Yes.
the first one is New York. Sorry, the dog, I'm really sorry if you can hear, the dog has decided to start barking in the background because someone has just dared to walk. She's just dared to walk past our house, which is unacceptable. So sorry about that. So the first is New York. It's the last place I went on holiday properly with my dad. And he moaned the whole way round about how busy it was and how loud it was, so every time I go, I think of my dad being a typical northerner, being like, oh, it's so bloody busy, but it's so bloody loud. But that's my favourite thing about it, is it's really bloody busy and it's really bloody loud, and I love that about it. This will be my mum and my's 4th trip when we go for her 60th in 2 weeks.
Wow.
And I always really thought people were being a bit over the top when they said they left their heart there, but honestly, I've never loved a place like it. And there's been a couple of occasions where I've had the opportunity to at least apply for something to go and live there, and I've always turned it down because for me, it will always be a place I go and come home from, because I would never want it to be tainted by the day-to-day life of living there. And
I love that.
I think a lot of the appeal for it for me is it's so far from my reality at home that I can be absolutely anybody there. And it's not that I become somebody different, but you can go to New York, and I think actually London's very similar to this, and completely immerse yourself in a life that's totally different to reality, and nobody questions you about it. Because everyone lives such different lives there anyway, because it's such a mix of people that nobody bats an eyelid. You can dress, you could walk down the street in New York dressed as Big Bird and literally no one would look up from their phones. And I quite like that.
It's true.
I quite like that idea that you're surrounded by so many people, and yet you're kind of completely free to do what you want. And so this trip, we're not doing any of the touristy things. We might maybe do the Staten Island ferry, but that's the only touristy type thing. And instead we've decided, because we're there for a week, to do a borough type thing each day, because that's the bit that I really want to go and see that I've not really done properly. So we've got some really fun things sorted, and my mum actually turned 60 while we're there, so I've got some really fun stuff planned for her. But really, it's just every time I arrive in New York, I think, it's just everything. And then the flip side of that, the other side, is my lovely friend Jo, her house in France, where she lives with her now fiance, who is, I could squeeze his face, he's wonderful as Alex, but they have both run really successful businesses of their own. Really successful, and live in this completely idyllic, kind of almost isolated house in France. And it's got everything you could possibly need. They have an espresso, they have an espresso coffee machine, and they have internet. It's not like they're living, this completely deserted life, but there is nothing to see for miles around. It's quiet all the time. They have a pool, but it's not extravagant. It's the most French house place I've ever stayed, and yet feels the most like home. And I don't know if that's because it's Joe's and because we've been friends for so long, but they have created this sort of mesh of two lives to make this lovely home there, that I'm going there this year, and I can't imagine there ever being a year when I don't at least go once, because I can work from there, but at the same time it just feels like a little slice of heaven. It literally makes me smile talking about it.
But you know what? I've really not explored much of France at all. And actually, I've been to Calais and Paris, which is like standard British fare, Calais on a booze cruise. Quite a few times. And then I went to Paris last year. And then I did go to Lille last year, which I loved, in northern France. And I love the idea of northern France. I love the kind of the stronger connection it's got to Belgium and stuff. But I've never done the south of France. I've never driven around, never done the whole let's go stay in a chateau type thing. And I'm kind of keen for it, actually.
Yeah. Well, Joe, they live in Gers, the Gers district, which is, so you fly into Toulouse and they're about 45 minutes from Toulouse. But they're kind of, if you go a little bit further sort of south from them, you can see the Pyrenees. So Spain's literally just there. So I think they're about a 6-hour drive from Barcelona where they live. And there's a lot of Spanish influences in a lot of the towns, but
I love that.
They don't, it sounds awful this, but they don't really like English people and they don't really want to speak English, but that's nice because for me, or certainly it is for me, because actually I don't want to be kind of on. Do you know what I mean? Like if you're in a place where you speak the same language or you can speak their language or they speak your language well enough, you kind of feel like you're always up for conversation. Whereas round where Joe lives, you go into shops and you literally ask for what you want. They tell you how much it is and that's the end of it. You know, you'll say hi to people and, you know, you do the whole bonjour and, you know, all of that. But other than that, they all live their own lives, their own way. And I just love that mentality and it's a complete juxtaposition from what I have at home and what I love about New York, because it's proper alone time. Like I fall asleep there and it's quiet and the kind of quiet that's not kind of loud quiet. I know that sounds ridiculous, but you know, that kind of, it's so quiet you can't really cope. This is like completely serene quietness and it's just absolute heaven. And so I would highly recommend. I mean, Toulouse is an amazing city as well. Perfect city break. In fact, Sophie
Cliff went, didn't she? And
Airy, they went, and it's just such a cool city. But then and you're kind of 20 minutes from the airport to the city, but within less than an hour's drive away, you're in literally the complete sticks of France, middle of nowhere. And I just really like that. And I suppose a lot of it kind of reminds me of Yorkshire in that way, that you've got these big city hubs, but you don't have to go that far and you've just got nothing but green, nothing but plants, nothing but open, unpolluted air. It's lovely.
Oh, you know what? I hadn't thought about it like that, but I totally see that now. Oh, I do want to get a little bit more. I want to get a bit more France in my life. So, and I've got open time this year, so you never know what might happen.
You've got to get the cheese and the bread in your life. That's what you need.
Oh, I mean, the cheese and the bread is cheese, bread, wine. I'm in. I'm sold. Sign me up now.
What more could you ever want? Yeah, exactly.
What more could you ever want? Oh. So good. Now I really want some cheese. This is not good. I don't have any cheese in my house at the moment. Oh, and we are recording this at 8:30 on a Thursday, and I have no hope of getting cheese because I've already got my gym jams on. I'll be honest.
Me too.
So, we're so glamorous when we don't travel. I know. So, has there been a destination that perhaps has not lived up to your expectations or you haven't enjoyed?
I think Miami is definitely one of them, but that's just because of the circumstance. But I think probably the only place I never really enjoyed was, I'm not actually sure there has ever been anywhere that I've really not enjoyed at all, or I think there's been places where it's not the place's fault, it wasn't great. I think it was the people I went with or the person I went with. I do think that Costa del Crime was up there. I mean, Costa del Sol was up there with one of the worst places I've ever been. But I don't actually think that's a fair representation. I don't think it's a fair representation of it.
Yeah, I've been to Costa Dorada, which has a similar but not quite as pointed reputation as Costa del Sol.
I think we just did that typical wanky, all-inclusive, didn't leave, went to a market and it was like, he thought it was the greatest thing since sliced bread because we were getting some culture. And I was like, they're just selling fake handbags. Like, this isn't culture, mate. Like, this isn't culture. Oh. And I remember sitting by the pool thinking, I literally would rather be anywhere else but here. So I suppose in terms of that, but to me, that's the difference to me between travel and a holiday. And
interesting, yeah.
I do think there's a real difference, and there's no shade to people who only want holidays. I'm totally for that. But I think if you enjoy traveling, then holidays like that are about as far away as possible from enjoyment, because despite having everything at my fingertips, I could not have felt more claustrophobic.
Yeah, I think, that's so interesting, because I spent a long time holidaying. As opposed to traveling. Although I was always the one where you'd be away somewhere for 2 weeks and then I would find the things to do and get out and do them. It's a bit like when I went on honeymoon to Mexico. That was a holiday. That was a honeymoon. But we got out and saw a lot. And now I guess what I've sort of come full circle because I'm traveling a lot. I'm going on a lot of city breaks. I'm seeing a lot of places. I'm wanting to kind of squeeze every drop that I can get out of them. But then I'm also going to Turkey on what will just be a week's holiday. It's a break, sort of a break from traveling, which sounds really weird, but yes.
No, but I think it's important to get to know what you want out of a trip, whatever that may be. And I think, you know, that I'm exactly the same. I think next year will be a kind of holiday for me where I don't achieve things. And I wonder if actually a lot of that comes from because I love writing about where I go. I don't know how you'd write about laying by a pool. So maybe that's it. So, and I think that can be quite a, I suppose not dangerous, but like an unhealthy place to be if actually all you're doing is picking destinations and picking trips with the sole purpose of writing about it, unless it's your job. But I think unless if it's not your job, then it's worthwhile. And I was saying this, to Mum, I will write content about New York when I get home, but I won't be blogging whilst I'm out in New York because I don't want to be tied to my laptop. I'll be working while I'm out there anyway because freelance life, but I don't want to be constantly thinking, oh, I need to take a photo of this because if I'm going to write about it, then blah, blah, blah. And I have got in my mind like kind of a couple of pieces of content I'd like to write about New York, but I'm certainly not going for the purpose of blog content. And I think it probably took me a couple of years of traveling and writing about travel to really find that right balance where there's a difference between going on a trip and writing a bit about it and going on a trip to write about it. And for me, it's just getting that balance right.
Yeah, I think that's so true. And it's part of the reason why I went to Barcelona on my own because I've been to Barcelona a lot. Andrew would never have wanted to come with me because Barcelona was done as far as he was concerned. And I wanted to go because I wanted to write about it, but I hadn't been for like 11 years and my photography was just so appalling. So I went to Barcelona for the sole purpose of writing about Barcelona. That is really why I went on that trip. And that helped me go on like my first proper kind of solo trip because it felt like I was going with purpose and kind of made everything a little less scary. But it's so true because I approached that trip and everything about while I was there completely differently, for example, to when I went to Marrakesh, which if I'd have got my laptop out and started blogging, my mum would have thrown it in the pool.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
She's like, hello, this is a holiday. Stop it.
Yeah.
Although she kind of is down with the whole Instagram stories thing a bit because when I take a photo of her, she's like, are you putting it on Instagram stories? You need to have permission for that, you know. She's become proper sassy mum now.
Little diva, I love it.
I know, right? I'm like, all right, sign this release form before I put you on my Instagram stories. But yeah, it is true actually. And I think there is something to be said about the purpose, like thinking about your purpose of traveling and kind of, and where you're at, on that. I just want to very briefly, we've been chatting for ages. It's amazing. I could talk to you forever.
That's lovely.
But I also just want to chat to you just briefly, because I know that this year, you went on a dreamy trip to Rome.
I did.
And Rome is one of my absolute favourite places for so many reasons. I've got this massively romanticised view of Italy. And I want to go to Italy more and I just love it. How did you fall in love with Rome?
I did. And I think it's interesting having gone, as much as we went on French camping thing, caravanning things, we went to Italy a lot. And actually my mum and dad were planning on buying a house in Italy. So Italy has really run through my life despite having no actual, like heritage there or anything like that. So, but interestingly, I'd been to very few of the big cities because they don't have caravan parks. So I really hadn't even thought about going really. And Rome really came about by accident, not obviously the city, it was already there. It didn't come about by accident, but my trip there did because a friend of mine is opening a pizzeria in Leeds. And he and I had been chatting, we've been friends for ages, and he and I were chatting about how much he loved Rome and that he was going in January. And I was like, oh, who goes to Rome in January? And he was like, there are hardly any tourists. The weather is beautiful. It's warm, but it's not hot. Like, it's just such a cool time to go. And I thought, oh, well, and he said, look, I'm going in January. If you fancy it, he's like, we won't go together, but I'll be out there at the same time. We can maybe catch up. And so I thought about it. And actually, as it happened, was going to a Jet 2 dinner for some other things, and got chatting to one of their team. And she said, well, what about if we sorted the flights out for you? And I thought, well, hello, all right. And one of the things was they wanted to do some more content around going to cities that are very much seen as being summery places, but out of season.
Yeah.
And so for me, that kind of was a bit of work as well, but I wanted to go somewhere where I'd never been before. I didn't speak the language, and I kind of wanted to make my own memories there. And I think, interestingly, I really resonated with your Paris posts, because I was really concerned that I was going to arrive in Rome single, which obviously I am, obviously, #single life forever. And I was going to be kind of inundated with like coupley love and romance. And actually it wasn't like that at all. In fact, I would say there were probably more people travelling alone that I met, or in groups of friends, than there were couples there.
And I found that in Rome, actually.
Yeah, and from the minute I arrived in Rome, I just found it really, I suppose in the same way that London and New York, it's that big city, but very welcoming feeling. And the first place I stayed at an Airbnb, which I actually think, in terms of if I could give people any tips if they travel alone, it would be stay in an Airbnb for at least the first couple of nights or somewhere. Preferably with someone where the host lives there as well, because I got so much from my host. So she wasn't from Rome originally, but she'd lived there for 10 years, and it was lovely to come home to a home and a bit of a chit chat over a coffee in the evening. And, you know, if I was going somewhere the next day, she could give me a bit of advice about, oh, well, actually, all the touristy things say to do it this way, but actually this is just as good. And she gave me some really great, like, kind of live in Rome advice. And so I stayed with her for 3 nights, and then I stayed for 4 nights in a hostel, the Generator hostels, which again are amazing if people haven't stayed there.
Yeah. I stayed in Generator in Amsterdam.
Yeah. They're brilliant. Yeah. I stayed in 3 or 4 of them, and they're just awesome. But then the nice thing about that is, again, I was around people who are traveling alone. And so everybody's got really great tips about where they've just been, or, you know, if it's better going slightly later for particular places. And it's just, so for me, Rome came at a perfect time as well, because I knew this year work-wise was going to be absolutely insanity, and it has been. So actually to start the year with a trip, rather than spend all year thinking, oh, I must have some time off, it kind of gave me some breathing space before the year really kicked off. And I'm glad it was somewhere, because originally I'd thought I was going to go to Barcelona, that's where I was going to go. And I thought, no, go somewhere you don't know, and go somewhere that you don't really know a huge amount about, other than, you know, eat, pray, love, and that's about it really. Roman holiday. And they're not really representative of what the city's really like. But and one of the really great tips that actually the girl who I was staying with, she told me beforehand, which was, so I could see the Colosseum from my little room in her apartment, but there was actually a metro stop closer to hers than the Colosseum one. And she said, don't get the one near me, get off at the Colosseum. And I was like, really? She was like, yeah, it's like a 15-minute walk to mine, but get off. And as you come out of the Colosseum steps, the Colosseum is literally right there. Imagine like coming out, I don't know, steps in front of Buckingham Palace or Big Ben. Like, it's literally right there. And I think that was I had that wow moment from the first moment I arrived in Rome. And it was kind of like that the rest of the time. It was I had a lot of breathing space and headspace, whilst also cramming loads into it. And I think that's...
Well, you were there. You just seemed to be there. I was like, Emma lives there now. You were just there forever. I was like, oh my God, she's moved to Rome.
That's it, I've gone. I've always done like 3-day city breaks and crammed in so much. And when I was talking to my mum about thinking about doing this trip, she basically begged me to go for a week. She was like, please go, and go for enough time that you can have. So 2 of the days that I was there, one I spent at the apartment with my balcony doors open, listening to music and writing my book, which very exciting. Whether that ever comes to anything is beyond me. But I wrote about 5,500 words in a day, just laid on the bed, listening to music, drinking coffee. And actually, had I've only gone for 3 or 4 days, I'd have felt guilty about doing that because I'd have wanted to cram more Rome in. And the second day, I had a half day where I just sat in a coffee shop. I found a really gorgeous coffee shop near the Trevi Fountain that I could see the Trevi Fountain, but it wasn't right on the square. And I literally sat and drank coffee and read a book all afternoon. And it was absolutely idyllic. And so I think going forward, whenever I have my January, I'm now going to have a week's holiday every January, come hell or high water.
Yes.
And I'm always going to go somewhere where I can have a bit of breathing space. And it was lovely. Like, don't get me wrong, standing in the Sistine Chapel, very cool. Seeing the Vatican, awesome. Climbing to the top of St. Peter's Basilica, highly recommend it. But I got as much from sitting, drinking the coffee and reading as I did from watching the sunset from the highest point in Rome. And yeah. I suppose it goes back to whatever that purpose is for your trip. And for me, in terms of like making plans for trips, I would always say that to people, like, just have a think about not even where you want to go, but what you want out of it. And if what you want is headspace away from work and just come home feeling relaxed, don't go for 4 days and cram 20,000 steps a day of walking in because you'll just come back knackered. And at the same time, if you feel like, you know, you want a bit of adventure, go somewhere completely out of your comfort zone and, you know, do something completely extraordinary. And I think having a purpose to your travels is really important, or certainly it is for me.
Yeah, and setting an intention. I love that.
I mean, I do that in life.
Can I make a... Yeah. Got to do it when you travel as well.
Yeah.
Can I make a suggestion for January 2019's week-long Emma adventure? Go to Lisbon. Spend a week in Lisbon.
Yes. It was on my list last year. I was meant to be going to Social Media Live thing, the big you know, web summit. And I couldn't go in the end because of work. So I will make that. January 2019 will be Lisbon for sure.
Yeah, so I went to Lisbon in January. I will always tell everyone to go to Lisbon. I went to Lisbon in January last year. Best place I've ever been.
Amazing.
Absolutely adored it. It's screaming out for a whole week. You've got excellent day trip, flow culture, amazing custard tarts in every corner.
Yes, I need them.
You need them. You
need tarts in my life.
Love it. You need tarts in your life. Everyone needs a tart in their life. Look, do it.
Sunshine and tarts.
Oh, also Airbnbs are plenty there. You will love it.
When I was looking, and loads of them have got balconies and pools as well.
Yeah.
Which I'm all about.
They're all up in Alfama, which is all high up, so you get amazing views. And it's
amazing.
It's just perfection. You've got to go. You would love it.
Right, that's it. I've decided. I'm going to go look at flights when we get off the phone.
I love being an enabler. It's my favourite thing to do.
Me too. That's me too. Absolutely.
So I've got 2 quick questions for you. Well, a quick question and then a thoughtful question before we wrap up. So I've been asking everyone on the podcast to talk to me a little bit about if someone was coming to their home city, where would they recommend? And I know that you live in Harrogate, which I haven't not been to I went the very first year that Mrs. Farrow and I were together. So it was a very long time ago. And actually I might be, don't tell anyone, I might be visiting in the summer. So I'm going to come and knock on your door. I might be coming to Harrogate.
Yes.
So I'm very excited. So if someone was to say, I'm going to Harrogate, what should I do? What would you advise? What's like the top thing that you would say you must do?
I think, weirdly, the best thing I would say is don't just stay in Harrogate. Like, Harrogate is gorgeous. It's a really beautiful town. And there's loads that you can do in terms of, like, you could fill probably a couple of days of pottering, and there's little museums and there's nice galleries and stuff. But actually, it's perfectly like prime placed in North Yorkshire and Yorkshire in general to get around. And so I would say places like Haworth, Pateley Bridge, and a lot of the little kind of hamlets around it are just incredible. Like, there's so much history, there's so much kind of heartwarming, fresh air, old cottages, tea rooms that I think get so overlooked. And Harrogate's a really good base, I think. We've got some absolutely incredible restaurants here. Like, really, things that make me quite happy is the fact that we're really kicking out all the chains out of Harrogate again. So your Jamies and your bar and grills, they're all gone, basically. And in their place, although not quite as much, but they are definitely picking up, are the indies again. And we've got some incredible places. So Norse, which I bang on about all the time, but like a Scandi vibe, small plate dining, gorgeous food, gorgeous. And then we've got places like Betty's, which obviously is a Harrogate staple. And anybody who says the other Betty's in the other towns are better, I'll fight them for it, because they're not. The one in Harrogate is the best.
So the Betty's that I went to, so when I came to Harrogate, we could not even get near the Betty's in Harrogate. It was busy. So we walked from Harrogate to the RHS Gardens at Harlow Car.
That's an all right one.
And they've got a Betty's there. So it was like not as good, but we got slight Betty's experience while we were there.
I would always say there are very few places, even though I'm British, that I will queue for. But even in my own town, I will queue there to go. And the trick is, there's one, if I can give like people a tip, is there's two different places you can eat within Betty's. The one in Harrogate, the town centre one, is if you only want cakes and coffee, you can sit upstairs, and the queue for that is always shorter. You queue in the same queue, but they'll come out and ask where you want to be. So you sit at ground level and look out over the town. If you want hot food, lunches, and things that have to be cooked for you, you go down into the restauranty area, which is still really beautiful views as well, but it's a much longer queue. So actually...
so if you just want afternoon tea, you can go upstairs?
If you want coffee and cake, or coffee and a scone, you can go to like the ground floor level, and you probably queue for about 10 to 15 minutes as opposed to 35 minutes for downstairs. The other thing you can do is if you want proper afternoon tea, is you can book the champagne afternoon tea, and you have that on the first floor, which has amazing views of the town, and you completely bypass the queue altogether. You go in and they take you upstairs, and you have a white piano being played for you, and it's gorgeous.
Oh,
so there's...
What is cake without champagne? It's got to be done.
I mean, what is cake without champagne being served by somebody who is dressed in like a frilly apron and kind of bows as they walk away from your table, like, hi, luxury. It's gorgeous.
Dreamy.
It's dreamy. And then they have the little shop as well. So the other thing is if you don't want to sit in, all of the cakes they serve, they also do as takeaway, and they do bread and all sorts. And although they are famed for their fat rascals, which are lovely, they also do the best Yorkshire curd tart known to mankind.
Oh, hello.
And it's underrated, and they don't shout about it enough, which I'm quite glad about. But you can either get like a whole, like a kind of individual one, which is kind of a bit bigger than like a Portuguese tart, or you can get a slice of the really big one. Either are awesome, but I would highly recommend. And they do take out coffee as well, so you can get everything that you need from it. But I would say go out and about though. Go hire a car for sure, or get a train and go to places like Ilkley, Otley, Pateley Bridge. There's just so much. And actually, if indies are what you like, we do indies so well in Yorkshire, because a bit of Yorkshire custom,
you really do.
Yorkshire welcome. We do great produce. It's gorgeous. We've got the best air. We've got the best water. We're just the best.
I love it. Well, look,
I
have this discussion all the time about why the hell I don't live there. And it's constant source of surprise to me. There's why all the best people live there.
We do.
Apart from
Yorkshire
me,
massive.
so it's quite stressful. Yorkshire massive. I love it. So before we wrap up, honestly, I could literally talk to you for we could have a 3-hour podcast, and it would be amazing. Your insight has just been incredible. And it's been a really special conversation. I've really enjoyed it.
Me too.
So before we've covered this a little bit throughout, but just to kind of end on, can you tell me kind of what travel means to you?
It's really funny. I was writing notes about this earlier, and I got a lump in my throat writing about it. And I'm not a really cry person. Anyone who knows me knows that I'm a bit ice queeny. But honestly, for me, travel is sanity. It's my complete therapy. It's, you know how some people like hot baths and a good book or a nice brisk walk? I like the feeling of adventure that you get from traveling. And for me, it's a connection to places I've been before and people that I love who I've been to those places with or who have a connection there with. But also it's a really reflective time for me to just enjoy myself and my own time. And even though I work for myself and I live alone, for me, it's like a holiday away from being on my own, because I'm surrounded by other people, but they don't have any expectations of me. And I think I'm all for the whole, work to live, not live to work. And one of the great things about being my own boss is I can decide to go away for the weekend, or I can decide that I'm going to go and work. So when I was in Rome, for example, I worked while I was out there. So it gives me all that flexibility. And I think for me, having the ability to travel it's the best kind of therapy. It's the best kind of escapism. And for as long as I am able to get my ass on a flight or a train or a boat, I will be. And the more I do it, it's like any kind of therapy. The more you do it, the more you get from it. And I think I implore anybody who doesn't travel alone or has never traveled alone to do it, and not just do it once, but to find a way to enjoy traveling on your own, even if that means literally going to a city 50 miles from where you live on your own. Because I know not everybody has the ability to be able to go completely alone miles, hundreds of miles away. But the things you learn about yourself and the kind of confidence it gives you as a person, especially as a woman, I think traveling alone is invaluable. I really think it is. And I think nobody ever gets to the end of their life and says, I wish I'd travelled less. I wish I'd seen less of the world. I wish I'd sat at home more.
Yeah.
And I think there is a lot to be said. I know the world can sometimes seem like quite a scary place, but actually there's such a big world out there, and to stay in one place just kind of doesn't seem right to me. So that would be what it means to me. It's freedom. It's therapy, and it's a way of expressing myself outside of day-to-day life.
I love that. And you know what? It reminds me of a quote that's really important to me, that actually comes from a song from a musical. And I was in that musical when I was like 15. It's so niche, but there's a musical called Anything Goes, and a lot of it's set on a ship, and it's very Flapper Girl kind of era.
Love it already.
And there's a song called There's No Cure Like Travel. When you get anyone that's on the podcast, just when you've listened to this, go to YouTube, stick that in and listen to it. And one of the lyrics start, "There's no cure like travel to help you unravel the worries of living today." And genuinely, that is the mantra that I live by. And what you just said, absolutely. You got it right. When we finish yapping, you must listen to it, because it's right up your street. It's so niche. It's like so random.
But isn't that it though? I think travel is quite, I think people think of travel as being quite niche. And I think people think of travel as being kind of, it has to be expensive and it has to be like really well planned. And I think if I could give, aside from the travel on your own, if I could give anybody one bit of advice about travel, is don't plan it too much. Like don't over research places. Yes, do your research, like check how you're going to get from the airport to where you're staying, and have a look for like, a top 5 things that you're going to do, but don't make plans for your trip before you've even got there, because every time I've done that, I've had to throw plans out of the window, because actually you get there and you realise there's so much more that people haven't written about in a travel blog, or haven't, and you can miss out on so much of life in general by planning too much and not leaving yourself open for adventure. And so
you just have to let it happen. And I believe that very much.
Absolutely. Just breathe it all in and let it. I mean, that sounds really wanky again, but
it's allowed. We're allowed it on this podcast.
I think it's just, if you plan anything like, if you plan too much, you'll miss out on all the little opportunities that arise from not having plans.
Yeah, you've got to give yourself space. And I think in travel particularly, it's very important.
Just the best thing in the world.
This has been absolutely incredible. It's been such a wonderful conversation. I have loved every bit of it. We're going to have to do like a round 2 later on in the year because there's still so much to talk about.
I mean, my face is hurting from smiling.
Oh, yay. This
really
is amazing. Good. And I know that everyone listening is going to have got so much from kind of your insight and your experiences. So thank you for being so open with us. Where can people find you online?
So you can find me on my blog, which is thelifeedit.co.uk. I'm also over on Instagram, which is Emma's Life Edit. And you can also find me usually in quite a ranty, kind of giphy life on Twitter. And on that, I'm Ms. Emma_Louise.
Perfect. All of links to where you can find Emma and some of the things that we discussed that are on Emma's website will be linked in the show notes. So we'll be able to do that. Thank you ever so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thanks so much for listening to this week's episode of The Travelust, and I hope we've managed to inspire you to think about your next trip. If you've enjoyed this episode, I'd love it if you gave it a little review and rating on iTunes or your podcast player of choice, so even more people can find their inner travel lust. Until next time, have a safe journey.